Hello, my name is Shannon Bettles and I'm the president of the BC Historical Federation. I'm joining Satwinder Bains and Sharanjit Sandra from the South Asian Studies Institute at the University of the Fraser Valley today. I'm very proud on behalf of the BC Historical Federation to present the South Asian Studies Institute with a grant of $4,000 from our Centennial Legacy Fund. Now, Satwinder and Sharon, I understand that the fund will be going towards your project entitled Missing Aesthetics of Early Sikh Settlers in British Columbia, Where Are All the Women? It's a very provocative title for a very important and interesting project. Congratulations on the award. So I'd like to know a bit about how excited are you to receive the funding, and if you are able to tell our audience a little bit more about the project.
Absolutely excited and want to thank the Federation for supporting our vision and our ideas in this research that we're undertaking. We believe this is the first time that in Canada that anybody has been looking at the missing women in a different perspective around, not around Indigenous folks, but around Canadian legislated discriminatory policies that prevented women from actually coming to Canada and joining their partners and bringing their children with them and creating family and collective communities. So we are very proud that we're taking on this work, very important work. They not only are they erased from our history, but they have been erased through a very purposeful discriminatory practice in the government.
And just echoing as well, thank you so much to the BC Historical Federation. I think we've had such a great relationship with the BCHF. We were happy to contribute an article in one of its past magazines. So just incredibly grateful for this grant and the opportunity to do this work that Satwinder says hasn't been done in this sort of a way and in this sort of an analysis.
Our judging panel was very impressed with the application submitted forward. You also submitted a number of photographs to sort of paint the picture of what the project would entail. The Centennial Legacy Fund supports projects that encourage historical research, such as the one you have planned, into British Columbia's history, its community, and its diverse peoples. So I wondered if you could let us know about maybe how the project came about. There's some photographs here that you've shared with us, and maybe speak a bit to those photographs and what we can look forward to seeing from the project.
Over the last 10 years, we've been collecting and archiving the family history of South Asians in British Columbia and in Canada. And of course, in this work, we have mined and found amazing documents and photographs that touch us to our very core, because 100 years ago, what these brave men faced, we are not facing today. So very important for us to record that history and to tell it in a first-person narrative. Although these men may not be around, their families carry with them the oral tradition of family storytelling. And these photos say 1,000 words. And we were struck by the missing women. A lot of these photographs show very steadfastly strong, forward-looking, strong-faced, strong jaws of men who were looking at the camera without flinching. But I wondered, behind the scenes, what was going on in their minds and how much they missed their women folk and their mothers and their children and their wives, and how they persevered against so much discrimination in this country at the time. And we understand that at the time, many communities were also suffering along with them. So the photographs have shown us that while they persevered and they remembered their families back home, they lived very far away from their country of origin. And young as well as middle-aged and older men became community. They looked after each other. They learned how to cook, which perhaps at that time was work that women mostly did. They washed their laundry and they looked after the sick, and it was a very, very difficult time. And we wanted to understand that history, understand what happened at the time, and to bring in those women who were back home and waiting for the men to either go back or invite them, hopefully when the laws change, to come and join them in Canada.
A picture really does paint 1,000 words, and as we go through these pictures here, you really can see what you were referring to, the intense stares into the camera, and it really does make you wonder who's taking the picture, where are they when the picture is taken, and what are they thinking, and where are all the women? There's another one here that's in front of us. Do you want to say a few words about this one?
This is a very old pioneering family, settler family in Abbotsford and Mission. On the very right of the photo is Inder Singh Gill, whose family continues to live in Abbotsford, and they have been one of our great resources, because this family, held on to the small amounts of archival information that they had from the time. And this is the man whose letters his wife wrote to him when she was in India and he was here over a period of 17 years. And there are many times in the letters she challenges him about his love and asks whether he will ever return, and that should she wait, and that she is becoming old, and that she has lost her youth in her waiting. And so this photo is very evocative, because this man is sitting with his uncle and his nephews, and he came as his uncle invited him to come to Canada as if he was his son. So even those relationship lines were blurred, where blood relationships became much more important in terms of not just giving birth, but having relationships with each other and sense of kin and community. So bringing that, I'm sure that's one of the reasons the men survived. I think it would have been very difficult if they had not been connected to each other. They found relationships just around village life and where they came from, the regions they came from, the districts they came from. So Niranjan Singh Gill brought Inder Singh Gill to Canada, and you can see Niranjan Singh Gill is an older man, and this was his nephew. So for him to dedicate his life to his nephew was also a very important story. And what did that take? What courage did that take?
So this is a family portrait from yet another settler family in Abbotsford. Rajinder Singh Gill also continues to live in Abbotsford, and he has probably one of the most amazing collections of photographs of his dad. His great uncle was actually a passenger on the Komagata Maru, and I don't think I've shared that picture in this collection, but we have a picture of his great uncle who was a passenger, was denied entry to come into Canada and returned, and actually never ended up coming to Canada. And when Rajinder speaks about his family's history, he starts crying every time. And I think that's part of that emotional attachment we have to these very early histories of racism and denial into this country, and denial of citizenship, and denial of voting rights. And I think that's a connectivity that continues to this very day. So this picture is of Rajinder's grandpa, I believe, Dharam Singh Gill. And I think one element that we'll notice in these pictures and will be a part of our analysis is the aesthetics of the images, right? The dress of the men who couldn't always afford to wear or purchase very fancy suits. And yet every portrait you will see, they are dressed in three-piece suits. There's a certain messaging in the aesthetics of these portraits and these images, and that's going to form a layer of our analysis as well. And very exciting work, because there has been a little bit written about the art of aesthetics in these portraits, but it hasn't been deep enough. So I think that's going to be a very exciting element to what we bring out.
These photographs always make me smile, because it's beautiful to finally see a woman with a child on her lap, with her children surrounding her, and a man standing behind almost in support. So this photo always makes me smile. And this is also a very well-known family in Abbotsford. You can see that they carried the tradition of turban and clothing with them and maintain them while they came to Canada, and the children are born here. You'll see the mother wearing a dress, her ankles are bare, and that's very uncommon for South Asian women of the time, but adapting to Canadian society in a way that was more acceptable at the time. But the very right photo of the young men holding their swords shows them prepared to become warriors, and not in the traditional way of warfare, but in the more spiritual manner of being steadfast and strong and fighting against social justice. And these photographs, this collage of photographs shows, so many things. It shows industry, them working on a farm. It shows them in a gurdwara. He's getting some sort of recognition with a garland around his neck for his work. And he's much older in this photograph, as you can see, and other men are looking upon him. He must have been some sort of leader. And then for his young sons, for him to be standing with them, he must have felt such pride and joy that his family's life would be complete and that he could carry his traditions with him to this country and maintain them. So I think there are so many layers, as Sharon says, to these photographs that have not been explored. And we want to take this opportunity to bring those stories to the front, because although they might be in the recesses of our mind, some of our students and our children in the school system or in the universities have very little access to this history. And we want to make sure that they know their past so they can understand the difficulties they went through, but at the same time that informs them in terms of being aware of becoming actors in social justice and having agency and what people went through at the time.
And as you speak of the photo, I can imagine them coming to life. So thank you for that. And with your project, how will they become accessible? How will you tell the story? And who will do the project?
Well, we're really hoping that our young students are going to do the project. We're hoping that they will do the interviews, that we will guide them, but we want third generation and second generation students to go and do the interviews and hear the first time stories. And then we want them to analyze those stories and maybe give their perspectives in terms of being third generation. You know, what did they know and what did they not know? And now that they know, how do they feel? So we want them to give their analysis as well, because perhaps I'm from India and I maybe give a different analysis, but someone who's born here, who's being exposed to this type of storytelling, maybe for the first time, you know, we want the young students to take the photographs. We want them to analyze them. We want them to go and meet the families and hear the old stories, and then maybe do some research on the challenges, the legal challenges that were out there. And at the same time, put the names to these people. One of the challenges we have with minority photographs is, you know, it'll say a Chinese man or an Indian man without giving the person their true name. And it just shows the omission, the idea of omission, the idea of saying it's not important to know this person's name. It's just important enough to know that they're Indian and that they're from this country or this ethnicity. So we want to name the families. We want to put names to them, because a name also signifies a whole genealogy, a whole history. And because South Asians come from clans, where the Gill clan, the Brar clan, the Sidhu clan, the Bains clan, in that clan, there is a whole generational history that comes out as well. So we're hoping that naming the family members will also be part of this exhibit. And we hope that the photographs will make up our next exhibit at the Sikh Heritage Museum. And then we will put all the analysis through into our online platform as well. And hopefully it will be part of Sharon's history classes as she goes out into the classroom and teaches this course.
Because the SASI has a bit of a collection already secured and in our databases, we're hoping it's a UFV student that we can hire to do this work. And it's just creating that synergy around our university students who are already doing such great work, but also showing them that this exists as well and there's opportunity for them.
I agree. I think we want to show that history matters, and we want to build new scholarship. We want to build new scholars that look at the archive, that look at past history. We do want our children to look at the contemporary times that we live in and provide all kinds of future projections for where we need to go. That's important. But I think at the same time, a love for history, a love for our community's history. And Shannon, I want to say to you that we're so indebted to you for believing in us, because unless we do this work, I'm sorry, we will be living in a blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's our honor to be able to provide this kind of funding, which I will add comes from donations made to the BC Historical Federation and that we match. So this is the wider community supporting the work you're doing.
That's the icing on the cake then.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a very iconic picture because the family is from the island. And the man sitting in the front with the turban, Mahinder Singh Badial, is the first man we know of that is of the record that went and put his ballot for the first South Asia. That was the first time South Asians were allowed to vote.
You mentioned the Sikh Heritage Museum in Abbotsford, a National Historic Site of Canada, and that you have exhibits there. Is that something that the South Asian Studies Institute participates in regularly, in putting exhibits on there?
Yeah, we're very fortunate. Shannon and I co-curate the exhibits every year. We used to do 2 a year, but the work has become very large and onerous, so we do 1 a year. It's a volunteer position for us, and we are very fortunate that the Council of the One Society of Abbotsford has given us the management rights to manage the museum and to build exhibits every year and to invite people in. We encourage everyone to visit the site. We do a lot of tours. Sharon does, numerous tours throughout the year for young students to walk through the museum, and I can tell you a little bit of that history touches them as well while they're young. So we're very fortunate that some of these photographs have already been into the museum at some point. But I think the next stage, which is a much deeper thinking on our part as well, to provide that kind of depth to the stories, that little bit of layering that is more nuanced. People love seeing the photographs, don't get me wrong. They want to see the historical pictures. In fact, that's all they want to see. But we want to kind of inform the community a little bit more about the reason that we are here, the things that we have fought for and how far we have come, so that we don't forget our responsibility to maintain social justice in Canada.
I think fulfilling it is for us to do the work, but also the tours that we've given in that space. And I think it's a lot about pushing boundaries and pushing people's understandings and perhaps stereotypes and ignorances as well. And I'll be very blunt to say we see a lot of that, right? But that space, the Sikh Heritage Museum, really allows us to have those difficult conversations. And I think Satwinder and I have both seen physically people changing. The moment they enter that space, they learn the history and they leave the space, all of a sudden they've shifted their whole worldview and viewpoint, and it's very powerful to see that actually happen. So very lucky to be able to do that work. And I don't know if Satwinder mentioned, it's a 3-way partnership, like she said, between Council of the One Society Abbotsford and the Reach Gallery Museum. So for 10 years until 2021. After that, we'll see what happens, but it's a 10-year partnership.
There's a few more photos here. I see one of a family with 3 little kids there. Do you want to speak to that photo?
Mr. Gurbaksh Singh Taliwal and his wife Preet Mohinder live in Abbotsford. The mother has passed away now. Their 3 children. They're very much elderly, but their stories make up part of our narrative around how people came and how they established themselves, and their journeys through on ships and what they kept. One of the things that Preet Mohinder kept was her dress that her husband gave to her to wear when she arrived. And she says, I kept it because, she said, for me, it was so difficult to wear a dress at the time. And so she's kept it for almost 50 years. And he kept, from him, we have a little copper lunchbox that he brought from India. He said his mother, the mother you see in the photographs, who came much later, gave him a little bit of food to carry on the ship. And he carried that box with him here, and it's quite dented, but in those dents, I'm sure there is so many stories and so much of his resilience to face the world alone, coming from so far away. Even the photograph with the plane, tells you that much later he may have gone back home to visit his mother and get married and bring his wife later on with him to Canada. The stories are just so, also, although there are similar narratives, each one is imbued with so much beauty and so much resilience that we almost can't miss anyone. Because someone might say, what do you need 300 stories for? Because every story has a unique poignancy that I think has to come out through each person.
And in terms of going back to the portrait and the family portrait, when we interviewed Preet Mohinder, she discusses being very uncomfortable and almost angry that she's being forced to wear English clothes, like English dress and those dresses. And so I wonder if that's part of her resiliency or her pushback to refuse to wear a dress in this portrait. Like, I'm just curious, that conversation. And it would be, she's still alive, so it would be fascinating to be able to ask her those questions just around the portrait and hear those answers, because she's not wearing a dress.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I think I speak for a lot of our viewers when I say we were all very intrigued to find out those answers and to see what stories emerge through this project. So I just want to thank you once again for talking to us here through teleconference. And congratulations once again on the fund, award of your award of the fund.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for believing in us. Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we will make you proud what comes out.
Oh, we are very proud already. So thanks once again, and we'll catch up with you soon.